There's a ton of different coverages, and we're going to talk more specifically about Michigan car insurance. So let's dive in and explain the different coverages that you have to carry, some of the optional coverages, and then what is probably the best fit for the different scenarios that you may be in. Let's dive right in. So there's a couple pieces that you have to carry, and the best way to think of it is to think of car insurance as three pieces. You've got coverage for others, coverage for you, and then coverage for your vehicle. So the coverage for others is called liability insurance. Essentially, if you injure someone or hurt someone or damage their property, that's the liability that you're liable for. So there's a couple pieces of that part. The coverage for others, if you were to injure somebody, is your liability portion. If we were to injure somebody in a car accident in Michigan, we have to carry at least $50,000 per person. It maxes at $100,000 per accident. So if you were to injure them, that's the lowest option that the state allows. Most people don't go with that coverage, mainly because our state doesn't charge a lot for the higher coverage. So if we up that coverage to the next level, which is $100,000 per person and $300,000 per accident, the cost isn't a large difference. It makes sense in most cases because some insurance companies will give you a little bit better of a deal if you have that higher coverage, depending on the level and the fit that you are for that profile. More commonly, I see people do the $250,000 and $500,000, so that's $250,000 per person, $500,000 per accident. Like I said, once again, it doesn't cost a ton in Michigan, so that's not the big factor. That's for if you hurt someone. You also have property damage, so if you damage someone's car, that's also part of the liability. Now, even though the state requires that you only carry $10,000 property damage, it really doesn't make sense to go that low. Most of the cars in Michigan are worth more than $10,000. If you were to carry that lower coverage and damage someone's car, you have to out-pocket the difference. And yes, I get we're going to talk about the no-fault state because this kind of gets confusing, but we'll talk about it here in just a moment. So stay tuned to the end. We're going to explain where the no-fault part comes in and actually eliminates some of these coverages. The most common one that people do is $100,000. So if you were to damage a nice vehicle, a good BMW, a good Mercedes or anything like that, most commonly you're not going to go over that $100,000 mark. Once again, very inexpensive, even if you went to $250,000 to cover a nice Ferrari if you hit it. Now, it's not going to cost you a ton. That's just the main piece. So liability is what is required to cover, and you pick the limits that you want. Now, the state also requires something called personal injury protection, which we'll get into in just a second. That falls into the next category, which is coverage for you. So we've got the others, now we're covering ourselves. This falls into a couple different things. We've got uninsured motorist. That way, if somebody has no insurance, they're uninsured, then it would cover medical for us or people in our car. So if we have a friend visiting from Florida, they don't carry the medical that we have in our state. If they're in your car, they get injured. Now you've got some sort of protection for that person. Same scenario for you. If there was some reason that the medical didn't kick in, then you would have that uninsured motorist for people in your vehicle. Same coverage, you would carry usually the same as you do for the liability, so the $250,000 per person, $500,000 per accident, depending on what levels you guys choose to go with. There's also something called underinsured motorist. So if somebody carries the state minimums and you think that that's not enough, then you can carry the additional cost. That way, if that scenario does come up, yours is going to pick up the difference. So if I carry 50 and 100, they carry 250, 500. Mine will pay the uninsured difference between the medical. The last piece, which is required by the state, is that you have personal injury protection. In other states, it's called MedPay. It's a little bit different because ours includes some sort of work loss benefit. So if you can't work because of an accident, it'll pay some of a paycheck for a certain amount of time. It also includes death benefits and retire. Like there's a couple little things that it comes packaged with. The main piece that everybody focuses on is the personal injury protection limit. This is where it's changed over the last couple years, and I'm not going to go too far in depth because I actually made a video, I'll link at the end here, that will go over the exact levels that you can pick. Most of the time, you're going to pick the unlimited because it comes with what's called long-term care, so you're protected to the max. It is what it says it is. It's medical for you, so personal injury protection. You and any blood-related family that live in the same home. If there's people that are out of your home, they have other coverage for themselves. The state picks up some different coverages. You have the unlimited, which is the most common right now. You have $500,000. You have $250,000 of medical. You have $50,000, and then opting out completely. The $50,000 you can only do if you're on Medicaid. The opt-out completely is if you are on Medicare, Parts A and B. and there's qualifications for these as well. Like I said, we'll link a video at the end that'll go over that, but that's essentially the coverage for the medical, the personal injury protection that most people pick. It never hurts to try a couple different options. So if you're debating between the unlimited versus having a $250,000 level, you can ask your agent and work with them to find out cost-wise if it makes sense, but also what are the pieces that you're giving up when you're leaving that unlimited package. If you are shopping around, I'll put a link in the description below to our agency where we can work up a quote for you and explain some more detail. If you have a unique situation, we'd love to go over it with you, or just in general, see if we can help you. We work with a handful of companies and hopefully we can help you as well. Now, the last piece is the coverage for your vehicle. This is where you decide whether you want comp and collision. That's what they call full coverage. It's kind of a made-up word because full coverage actually isn't defined in insurance in general. The coverage for others, coverage for you is already taken care of, and now we've got the coverage for our car, and that piece is really the deductible that you want to carry. If you have a loan, 9 times out of 10, they're going to require that you have specific deductibles. You can't go above or below whatever limit that they set. Most commonly, it's $1,000 or less. So the first part of that full coverage word is the comprehensive. That's theft, vandalism, if you hit an animal, if the windshield cracks, any of those small pieces. You've got the comprehensive coverage will come with any deductible that you set a limit to. It's not very expensive to carry the comprehensive coverage, so if you have a higher deductible, it's not really saving you a ton. I don't recommend necessarily going above $500 unless you've had a ton of glass claims or comprehensive claims to where that's going to reduce the risk down. The collision is going to be the biggest impact as far as the vehicle goes because that's what's covering your car in general. This is also where we used to be confusing with the coverages. A lot of people and a lot of agents don't necessarily go over the details which they're supposed to. There's 3 levels of collision in the state of Michigan. The first one is called limited collision. Limited collision, honestly, almost nobody does, but it's an option. So if you can't afford the insurance, but you need some sort of coverage and you fully trust yourself, you have that option. If you get into an accident with the limited collision and you're at fault, it's not covered. It only covers your scenario where you're not at fault in the claim and you still have to pay your deductible. This is where that no fault part comes in. I have to go fix my car, pay whatever deductible I set. The second option is the standard or regular collision, as some companies call it. The regular or standard collision in Michigan is essentially probably 50% of the time is what I see people go with. It means that if you have an at fault or not at fault, doesn't matter. In any scenario, now your vehicle's covered. However, regardless of who's at fault, you pay that deductible. But Mark, I wasn't at fault. Why should I have to pay that? Well, that's where you can opt into carrying the broad form. Broad form collision in Michigan is something that allows you to not pay the deductible if you're not at fault. So why would people carry the standard over the broad form? It doesn't make sense. Why is it 50-50? The broad form sounds so much better. Is it that much more expensive? Not really. It's not really a huge cost difference in most scenarios. Part of the reason that some people don't do it is because we also have a little coverage called limited property damage. It may also be referred to as limited tort or mini-tort. What that allows you to do is if you're not at fault in a claim, and it doesn't matter if you have broad or whatever coverage you carry, if you want to go after the other person's insurance, now you have the ability to recoup up to $3,000 back. You're essentially suing the other insurance company or just stating that they owe you the reimbursement of X amount of dollars. Let's play that out. In this scenario, let's say you had a not at fault accident, somebody hit you and you had no injuries but your car was damaged. You carry the regular collision but you have a $1,000 deductible. You paid that $1,000 out of pocket. You didn't choose to get the extra piece, which is rental car, so you don't get a rental car. Now you're stuck without a rental car. You've got to pay to rent a car. Maybe you had some incurrences for towing. Maybe you had to pay some extra cost for going out to eat for the next couple of days because you couldn't get to it. And there's a $2,500 bill when everything's said and done. You feel like you had the wrong coverages from the start, and it is what it is. Well, if you have that limited property damage, you can go back to that other person's insurance, give them all the receipts, give them the bills, show them whatever the case is, and now they are likely going to pay up to that $3,000 back to you to get that reimbursed. The cool part about that is it's actually not expensive. Most of the time, it's $5 every 6 months. It varies a little bit, but I typically don't see it more than about $1 a month to have. I almost always recommend carrying the limited property damage on your policy. And there you have it. Those are the main pieces of the car insurance that Michigan requires you to carry. Those are the coverage for others, coverage for you, and coverage for your vehicle. There are some sub pieces, but honestly, every state does them. You've got the option of purchasing towing and road service. Commonly, they want you to have at least comprehensive before they'll allow you to purchase it. You have the option of getting the rental car reimbursement, so it's a per day on most cases. If you were to get a covered claim and you need to rent a car, it'll pay X amount of dollars per day for X amount of time. Some companies and packages that we've had have been really good where they'll just say X amount of money. There's no limit. You can go rent a giant minivan. You can go rent a nicer sports car that you're used to, and you don't have to cap it. If you are interested in that, let us know when you do fill out the quote. And then the pieces that are specific to companies is some companies will offer accident forgiveness, some will offer claims-free renewal discounts, some will offer a ton of different pieces that you can get available to you. If you are interested in learning more about the discounts specifically, I'll link a video here that goes over some of the discounts that Michigan offers. I'll also link the video to the personal injury protection because we didn't go too far in depth, and it's very important to understand that. That's probably the biggest piece of the car insurance in Michigan is learning the personal injury protection. Go ahead and check those out if you are interested. Otherwise, I'm Mark with Valor Insurance. We'll see you soon.